And we're still right here. Ah yes, and here we have Marth, Jagan, and, Kent? Kent, you're in the wrong game, you know. Hey guys, what are you doing over there behind the bushes? You know, I can see you all the way from over here. You're doing a very bad job of lying low. Like the old guy's just standing in plain sight. And, of course, Marth is quite sad about his sister. And his father. Oh, and his mother, who was only ever mentioned once and will never be mentioned again. Yeah, remember that part where Elise said she was separated from their mother? Yeah, that's the only time she's mentioned. But there is a near 100% chance Marth's mother is dead. So, yeah, we're just gonna gloss over that fact. Poor Marth's unnamed mother. She's actually got it worse than Marth's unnamed father. I've prepared everything, but I don't think I've exposited enough just yet. Of course, we gotta go over Talus real quick. Gotta know where that is, since, you know, this is the first time we're hearing about it. And it is pretty much the only safe spot we actually have at the moment, because, Dollar's kind of steamrolling everyone at the moment, but an island that's not in the middle of the continent like Altia here, that's pretty much the only place we can go. And this is pretty much the only key I'm ever going to use. More on that later, of course. And of course, since Malladus is mentioning the fact that there are people on Graw's side that might not want to be on Graw's side, you know that's going to be important somehow. So, the first thing you might notice about this chapter is that the boss actually has a unique portrait. Now, most bosses in Fire Emblem do actually have a unique name and a face, especially once you get out of the prologue. This guy, though, only has a unique face. He is just called Captain, so I guess he's only mildly important. Now, the formation here really isn't anything that bad. These enemies aren't that hard to take down at all. This guy does have a hand axe, but honestly, I don't really find hand axes that tough. I mean, of course they can be used at a distance, but to be completely honest, they're not that powerful, and pretty early on in most Fire Emblem games, I find they're so inaccurate that I almost consider them a joke weapon. Like, obviously, in your own hands, hand axes can be pretty useful, just about as useful as a javelin, but for some reason, because so many enemies try and fail to use hand axes, I can't really take them seriously at all. Also, this guy does have something important to say. There are some powerful enemies pursuing us at the moment, and they will be approaching soon, as this guy will also mention. This guy with a very, very large forehead. Is that his weapon? His forehead? He's not gonna use that lance, he's just gonna bash us with his head. Seriously, that thing looks dangerous. Sir, I'll be the first to admit that I and the rest of the platoon are all pretty terrible. Uh-oh, what kind of trap could this be? What sort of dangerous, devious plot could he be coming up with? I don't know where this is heading, but, okay, get to the point. What's so dangerous about this? Alright, guess he's not gonna tip his hand to the player, clever bastard. Whatever he's planning, it's gonna be dangerous, I'm sure of it. And fortunately, these guys did do a fair bit of damage to Frey. Wish they hadn't, because, yet again, we don't have a healer. That's pretty much the only danger here, is that we don't actually have a healer, so... Oh, wait, cutscene time. He was already inside. Where did that door locking sound effect come from? Oh, whatever. A rumph indeed. I have to spell out the fact that you're gagged! Cause, you know, the viewer couldn't actually figure out that you're gagged from context clues. I mean, it's not on your character model, so therefore, they have no way of telling. I'm also gonna point out that you're wearing a Graw uniform, because again it would be impossible to tell otherwise. I'm just assuming that the player has absolutely no way of figuring out context clues. That's it? You're just gonna have Marth kill his own guy and then laugh at him? I may be sending a kid to his death, but I do believe in letting people have their own belief in religion. I'm a nice guy like that. So anyway, yeah, we can open this door, and Gordon there really isn't a threat. I mean, he's kind of just tied and gagged and doesn't really want to fight us anyway. But yeah, that was their master plan. Just have Marth kill a dude accidentally and then laugh at him, and then, no joke, if you do actually kill Gordon, which you can do if you're terrible, but they will just open the door and quote-unquote finish us off, even though no damage has really been done. I mean, I guess we'd be sad about accidentally killing a good person. Yeah, that would be demoralizing, but I don't think it'd stop us from fighting, so I really don't see how this plan was supposed to be effective in the slightest. So if we talk to this guy, he's going to go over the fact that there is permadeath, and that it's very tragic if there are any non-Marth deaths, that even though it's sad, you just have to move on, even though I'm fairly certain that most of us, if not all of us, will just restart a chapter if somebody dies. That's what I do. I won't lose anyone, even if I don't actually like them. Looking at you, Severa. But he might also be talking about something else that... God damn it, Marth, you idiot. But anyway, yes, he might be referencing something else that might happen soon. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. This mortifying state of having a gag and not really much else. This outfit is so uncomfortable. What kind of materials do they even make this out of? Well, Gordon, you can still fight, but you should probably stay behind Marth because you are an archer. And as an archer, it would be best if you stayed behind other units. Now, Gordon here, of course, while he should stick to forests and mountains and the like, just to keep some extra evasion, he can't survive a little bit from being hit. He's got a very high HP growth, so at the very least he can take quite a few hits. His main problem, though, is his speed. Now, his strength is of course a problem in itself because he doesn't have a very good strength growth at all, but his speed growth is also fairly low, and honestly, every time I've used Gordon, he ends up being so slow he can't really double things, which, as an archer, is a pretty big problem, so he's not completely useless, and that skill can help him a little bit, but all in all, I would consider maybe using a different archer when given the chance. But of course, if you are a terrible person and decide to kill Gordon, which does take some effort, poor guy's final words are Gurmph. I'd hate to have those be my final words. And I love that. It's just, oh my god, this is such a somber moment. You've killed one of your own. Da-da-da-da, you gotta level up. Alright, anyway, we can just skip this. Marth's not even that sad about it. He's just like, oh damn, that was a mistake. They killed the captive? Well, that's an egg on their face now! Alright, now let's go get ourselves killed! This does, however, allow you to skip a certain event we're going to see in a turn or two. But for now, let's just give Gordon this bow we found off a dead guy. I hope you don't mind blood too much, because if you do, that's gonna be a bit difficult to use. I also want to keep Frey near the back because he's a little lower on health than I want him to be, so I just want to keep him out of danger, at least until we can get to one of those fortresses up there. Uh-oh, that doesn't look good. And what do you know, it's the King of Graw himself. I'd say it's a pleasure, but he kind of really wants us dead. And unfortunately, he's got a fairly powerful force with him. Knights are very defensive units, even if they aren't fast or they don't have high movement. These guys are, well, none of our units can actually take even a single one of them on. Like even Jagan, who is a little bit farther ahead than most of our units in stats, would just be torn apart by one of those guys. And because that door is locked, there's really only one solution. We're going to have to send a decoy. Now, this isn't really a mechanic that's being introduced, even though it might seem like it. In fact, it's actually got its own menu option, but it only really appears this one time, so it's more of a story thing than anything else. And there is a designated character for this sacrifice. It's the character that doesn't appear in Chapter 1 if you go to hard mode. It's the character that wasn't in the original game. It's Frey. No matter how much Marth wants to get out of this without death, if you didn't kill Gordon, no matter how many units you throw at the knights over there, you have to send a decoy. Marth is the only character that cannot act as a decoy, and I wouldn't suggest sending Gordon because A, he's the only archer we have at the moment, and B, we've got a ton of cavaliers anyway, and they all have better movement than Gordon does. So I'd suggest either sending Jagan, since you're not really going to have that much use for him, though that's not the canon choice. Frey is actually a decent option to keep since he has some of the best stats. Abel would be another choice to send if you know, hate canon or something. I'm the smartest guy in the army! Uh-oh, looks like Jeel's figured us out. Could this have been all for naught? No! I guess we can count on Jeel being an idiot. So, this is really the guy that successfully backstabbed us and occupied our kingdom? Well, that got his forces away, but unfortunately, now they're all after Frey. They might not be fast, but unfortunately he is just one guy. They're more than likely going to catch up eventually. And, yeah, Malladus is right. As awful as it is that we're letting him die, it's better that we move on than to just, you know, all die anyway. And these idiots also fall for it, so they just decide to open the door because they're idiots. You know, if they just kept this door locked forever, at some point they would catch up and they'd kill us, so thank goodness these guys are suckers, I guess. Well, I know one of our dear friends kind of just died, or, well, he might not be dead just yet, but is more than likely going to die, but, I think this is probably the best time to go back into game mechanics. So, I haven't gone over weapons just yet. You might have noticed those numbers next to the weapons. That's the weapon's durability. Every time you land a successful attack, the durability goes down by 1. And yes, I said successful. If you miss, you won't actually waste any durability, which is pretty nice. Different weapons do have different durability. If you'll look at Jagan's Silver Lance, it has a lot less durability than, say, an Iron Lance. Talking about basic weapons, we have the Iron weapons, the Steel weapons, and the Silver weapons. Each one's more powerful than the last, so basically, yeah, as they get more powerful, you do get fewer uses of them. Which is why I generally prefer to stick with iron weapons, because, honestly, especially later on in the game, the extra attack power doesn't really help that much. I just prefer having the weapon for longer, and oh hey, look at that! I don't think that's our first critical in the game. I think we got one in the previous chapter, but yeah, Gordon just got a critical. If you remember, that is determined by skill and a little bit of luck. You can see the critical chance down at the bottom right there. Yes, that does mean we only have a 3% chance to crit at the moment, with Kane at least, so that is fairly low, and so it is fairly hard to get a crit, and unfortunately in this game, critical animations don't really look that good. Like, they're not fancy at all. I mean, in the Game Boy Advance games, the characters would just, like, spin around, or they'd spin their weapons around, they'd spin something around. There was a lot of spinning in those games, but the point is, it's just kind of a normal hit, except there's that extra flash. The animation's a bit different, but yeah, it's nothing really too fancy. So I guess now we're going to get into a few problems with Shadow Dragon. First off being that village over there. In previous games, anyone could visit a village. In this game, however, only Marth can go to villages. Which kinda sucks, because, yeah, you don't always want to send your leader out to the middle of nowhere to go to a village, but trust me, you do always want to visit a village. You might get an important item, or at the very least a helpful item, a new character, and at the very least it's just a nice thing to do, because the thing is, there are thieves in this game, and they can actually destroy villages. Normally it's brigands that attack and destroy villages, but no, in this game it's thieves, and if they reach the town before you do, yeah, it's just destroyed, and you get nothing out of it, and, well, people died. Oh, we also get to introduce a few more things here. Those are Pegasus Knights over there. They are flying units, meaning they can just cross pretty much any terrain, including water, which is something none of our units can do. And they're also very fast and they have high skill. The downside is they are very, very weak to bows. Like, generally, a bow will just kill them in one hit. Their HP and defense isn't that good as well, and honestly, their strength usually isn't amazing either, but still, they are one of my favorite units in the series. I do rather like Pegasus Knights. They're not the worst enemies to fight, but playable units, they might start out somewhat low, but they generally grow to be very powerful units. And also, I'd just like to point out that they did actually emerge from the fortresses. Reinforcements can appear from the fortresses, and that can definitely screw you up. If you stand on top of one of the fortresses, the enemy will not actually spawn, and thus you'll be able to, you know, not have to deal with those reinforcements, which can help, but you might also get less experience, so maybe you might not always want to do that. Now, about that other problem I was going to get into about Shadow Dragon, continuing off the critical animation thing. Art design in this game, not good at all. I've been waiting forever to say that, but my god, this game does not look good. It's muddy, the character sprites look pretty bad, the expressions on the character portraits are just so dull. Like, the characters in the Game Boy Advance games were just so expressive, and most of these guys are giving a small smile at best, and it looks boring. I mean, yeah, it's an improvement over the NES portraits, sure, but really, this game it doesn't look that good. I generally compare this to Castlevania, actually, because the DS Castlevanias, anime as hell, but they look great, especially the character portraits. The character sprites aren't the best, but they're a lot better than this game's character sprites. But yeah, and overall, at the very least, Aria of Sorrow. That game was pretty anime. Not as much so for Order of Ecclesia, but definitely for Portrait of Ruin and Aria of Sorrow. Those games were very, very anime, and that sort of art style would have fit this game a lot, but no, instead it's in this gothic game about killing Dracula. That's the game in which we have the very anime characters. And I don't really want to give Marth the experience that much because, yeah, he's already got plenty of experience, but I'm not really going to be using Abel. Plus, that rapier makes short work of this guy since he's a cavalier, and rapiers are effective against cavaliers and I believe knights in the same way that bows are effective against Pegasus Knights. And speaking of knights, here we have Drog. He's not going to get a bio just yet because we're not going to use him since, well, this is the end of the chapter. You don't say. Yeah, they were kinda after us, and speaking of them, here they are now. You know, Frey, you are still on a horse. You could probably, maybe try one last getaway. Not like you have anything better to do. But whether it's due to previous injuries or just because he feels he has nowhere else to run, Frey does not get away. In this dimension, I feel I should probably bring this up now, but I do have a file in which only Marth and Frey survived this battle. And my god, it pains me so much to have a file in which I'm actively getting characters killed. But here's yet another problem with Shadow Dragon. You might recall that Old Man also mentioned that having characters die might be the only way to meet new ones. Well, that is true. There's certain characters you can only get if you have other characters dead. This will mainly make up the Gaiden chapters of this game. However, if at least 2 characters were killed off in this chapter, you do actually get another character at the end of this chapter. Not Drog, you get him no matter what, but after we have our usual conversation with him, we will actually get a new character, an archer by the name of Norn. Now, I think this goes without saying, but any character you can get from getting other characters killed is exclusive to Shadow Dragon. Norn did not appear in the original, and if you play hard mode, again you'll just start off chapter 1 as though you're playing the original game, aka you don't have Frey or Norn. And again, we're going to be getting to Norn later on, not now. You can also sacrifice other characters for Marth to get away, and they do actually have different dialogue. Gordon here will say something different, but I'm not going over all the character deaths because that would take a little while, and honestly, I don't want to get a character killed off this many times because it would kill me on the inside. But I suppose that's enough about the dumb things they did for Shadow Dragon for the time being. We have just managed to escape Altia after all. It's unfortunate that we had to, but at least Marth's alive. And speaking of Marth, I do actually kind of like what they did with him in this game. Now, if you know Marth, you probably know that he is very kind and pretty damn naive. But in this game, especially when he's a child, which, to be fair, is where most of the dialogue is actually in this game, he is pretty vengeful. Like, the scene is just him saying that he's one day going to return and make everyone pay. I just think it's pretty interesting that when he's a child, he's actually like this, and in Fire Emblem 12, he is the nicest person on the planet. It's pretty interesting, though. I guess it could also speak for how much better the next game's writing is compared to this one's.